Hello and welcome to Viewpoints, Dominion DMS's video podcast series where we highlight our vendor partners. I'm Sharon Kitzman, president of Dominion DMS, and today we have Mike Wells. He's the senior enterprise consultant with Paychex. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Sharon, so much for having me on today.
Absolutely. I think most dealers would understand that Paychex probably has something to do with payroll, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, Paychex?
Sure. So I started with Paychex 30 years ago, and that's definitely what we did. We did payroll, we paid taxes, we got the employees paid. And as the demands of the government have changed for employers, we've expanded our scope. So really we help employers everything from recruitment to separation, and it's been a great run. I like to say that my two wonderful daughters probably know more about payroll and HR law because they were stuck in the back seat as I drove them to their various sporting events and had to listen to me talk about paychecks to employers for many, many years. And then it's been a fun ride.
Excellent. And, you know, we're almost at June 1st here, but how's your year going so far?
Year's been great. You know, it's definitely challenging for the employers, and so it's always fun to help people. And it really hasn't changed much. It's always been about how do I get the best employees and how do I keep them. And so the language that we hear in the marketplace changes a little bit, but when you peel it all back, it's the same thing that everybody's facing is how do I take care of my employees?
Right, right. So you mentioned you're broader than just payroll. There are a number of different companies out there that dealers could choose from, including, you know, trying to manage it through the functionality of their dealer management system.
Sure.
But maybe you could give us a little bit of a unique component of your solution that might separate you from your competitors.
What happened many years ago is employers figured out they couldn't do it on their own, especially in the state of California. There's too many government mandates coming at them. They're trying to run a business, and that's enough just when you think of what you've got to do to run a dealership. And you layer in everything coming from the federal side, which is coming pretty fast and furious right now, the state side, and depending where you are in the country, you could have your local city governments mandating HR rules to you. So Paychex many years ago expanded out and said, hey, what do our clients really need? And they need more. They need a trusted HR business professional to sit with them and help them navigate the challenges of being an employer so that they can stay in business and keep making money and not have to pay it out in fines and penalties.
Yeah, it is getting complicated out there. Not only in California, I think, but probably everywhere a little bit. So you just mentioned one component of, I'm sure, what keeps dealers up at night. If I think about all the various solutions that a dealer could use to run their business, and probably in many cases needs to use in order to remain compliant, like with Paychex, it's a pretty big ecosystem of solutions. As we work together as Paychex and Dominion DMS on behalf of our joint client, the dealer, is there something that we could do better, maybe from a workflow or a data perspective?
So the two companies have done a good job as far as the GL integration. So post payroll, how do we update their accounting system so they know what they spent in payroll? Where really everything's going now is what we call API, application programming interface. And that allows systems, whether it be Paychex and Dominion, to talk to each other. And so if Paychex is the system of record for an employee, as soon as that employee's status is changed, whether they be hired, whether they be terminated, whether they put on leave, that automatically updates your system, and then your system's going to stream it through everything else. That's where the magic happens, because right now what the dealers are faced with is they've got a multitude of databases, Excel, paper, the DMS system, and every time there's an employee status, they've got to remember, okay, where do I need to update that status? And it's all manual work. So having API is really the key to helping all our mutual clients.
Yeah, and it's not just straight payroll either, right? There's commissions and other variable pay components for different roles in the dealership to keep track of as well.
That's a whole Pandora's box. Dealerships I've talked to, as you said, not just in one state, but in every state, they are living and breathing in Excel of trying to help them figure out what they owe the employees. And then the biggest part really is helping the employees understand what they're being paid. Because when you have an employee who doesn't understand something, we're human, we assume the worst. And when the employee assumes the worst, that's when the employee relationship breaks down.
Right. And you have a whole cultural issue then. Like a lot of businesses across various industries, COVID was a real problem, right? A lot of things happened. In some cases, businesses had to make some tough decisions about employees. And in other cases, they needed to remain open and the employees needed to be on site with the consumer or the client. As you and your team think about various challenges, whether it's helping a dealer with some upside opportunities of growing their business, or maybe some downturn that is yet to come on the financial side of the business, what do you think about strategically or from a product feature functionality perspective that'll help a dealer?
Well, one of the great things about Paychex is we have a product team that is always thinking ahead, thinking where are we going? What do we need to do 4 or 5 years from now? So it gets down to the basics, and I've been through multiple cycles, and certainly Paychex 50 plus years has been through a lot more than I have. And at the end of the day, is the employers that survive the ups and downturns are the ones that have the best employees. They're the ones that keep them. And we've all gone to that dealership. We've had the great experience. And it's usually that employee has been there for a while who can explain everything. So for us is, how do I help you as an employer keep those great employees? How do I help you find those next great employees? And as the downturn has happened, you've got employees who are looking for a new career. How do you educate them on the great opportunities of being in an auto dealership? How much fun it can be, how financial rewarding it can be, and reaching those people where they're at, which really is all our mobile devices, right? So if you look at a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, they're not looking in the newspaper for a job. So how are you going to find them efficiently? How are you going to educate them? And then how are you going to start their employee experience so it starts off right and they have fun on the very first day, and continue on and you engage them and educate them and train them. So that's the stuff that the product team is always talking about. Is it's all boiled down to attracting, retaining, engaging.
That's great advice. It's costs so much to onboard a new team member or employee. Keeping the ones that you have and keeping them happy is so much better for the business and better for the team.
And if I can add, you really got to reach the employee where they're at, right? And if you're not training them using their mobile device, because that's how they're training themselves. If something breaks in my house, I'm looking at YouTube. If I got to assemble anything, I'm looking at YouTube. So that's really, as an employer, one of our clients recently said, it was the owner, he looked down and said, okay, how do I reimagine my employee experience? And that was from the owner's perspective. I'm like, wow, that is really insightful. But that was him intentionally going, how am I going to make my business better? By looking at it from the employee's perspective and making it better for them.
Right. Interesting. You're right about YouTube. That's where I go to when something breaks in my house as well.
It works.
Yeah. Earlier, we talked a little bit about what separates you from some of your competitors. At Dominion DMS, one of our goals is, of course, to provide the best possible DMS to our dealer clients, but that includes integrating really deeply with this broad system or set of solutions that dealers have and use throughout their dealership. If you had kind of one piece of advice for me and my team as we compete with other DMS systems out in the market, what would that be?
To stress that your system is open and willing to work with other systems. So when I started working with dealerships it was readily apparent that the 80% of the marketplace is controlled by I'll say the legacy DMS systems. And to say that there are limited in their ability to function with other systems is an understatement. They're really, it's a wall that they've maintained, trying to maintain getting their clients to only do payroll in-house on their systems, which is really short-sighted. Just getting an employee paid, that's 30 years ago. It's everything else that has to happen. How do I update the 401k system? How do I update the different agencies I have to update? How do I do OSHA reporting? All that sort of stuff. Those systems don't do. So the dealerships are really left at a disadvantage. And in many cases, sitting ducks for potential penalties and fines from agencies or the plaintiff attorneys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it's just getting more and more complicated every day. We have to let the experts who are in, certain segments of the market excel in that segment and give those opportunities to the dealers. If there's a dealer out there listening to this podcast that would like to learn more about Paychex, how would they go about contacting you or getting more information about your solutions?
Certainly. Today's day and age, they can contact me via email. We can talk via phone. We can talk via virtual, Zoom, WebEx, and just really start the engagement. And I always tell people, employers, is come with an open mind, and we're going to trade time for information, basically. So if we engage and have a collaborative conversation, my goal for that employer is to walk away and go, wow, I learned something. Whether or not Paychex and myself is going to be an option moving forward, we want to make sure that they've gained some insight, some knowledge for trading or investing their time in that conversation. And it really has to come from the top of the dealership. The people that have been doing the work, we're all human nature. Status quo is our biggest obstacle. And that's really where they need to look at and say, hey, why are we doing things the same way we did with employees as we did 20 years ago? Is there a better way? Whether or not that's me or Paychex, but at least they need to take a look and see what they can do better. And that's going to keep them competitive in the marketplace for those employees.
Okay, great. If you go to dominiondms.com and navigate to our partners page, which is on the top of the navigation pane, all of our partners are listed. You can look for Paychex, and we have a hyperlink there to their website. And then from there, I'm sure you can connect with somebody or reach out to Mike directly. All right, so since you're in a number of different industries, but we're talking about the automotive industry here today, and since you've been around and working in this industry for a while, do you have a car story for us, Mike?
Well, it's kind of funny. I grew up Midwest, right? So it was all Midwest cars. My dad drove an Oldsmobile. Yes, I was the typical, yes, my dad drove the Oldsmobile. It was always a Delta 88. I grew up in the backseat of a Delta 88 going on family road trips. So that's if I could say, okay, what car probably was the most formative was that. But again, going back to COVID, right? Things change. I don't have to drive 35,000 miles a year anymore. So now I have a fun car. And what was great about it was the experience of going, hey, I get to get a fun car now, right? So I went and test drove. And I ultimately chose Infinity. The experience with the dealership was fantastic on the sales side. And it was fantastic on the service side. And even doing the paperwork was great because it was all electronic. So that's my fun experience, is I truly now have a fun car that's fast and fun. And I just have to share it with my wife because she likes it too.
There's nothing wrong with a convertible. I drive one myself. Well, Mike, thank you so much for all of the great information that you've been able to share with us and our dealers about Paychex and how it can benefit them. And it truly is broader than just payroll. There's a lot going on in the labor market and a lot of laws involved, and dealers really need to be able to protect themselves with a great solution and a great support system behind them like Paychex. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.